Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's My Workbench, I have a leather project and a restoration project here. And I may break this out into two separate videos. This is a very old knife. I know for a fact that it's at least 70 years old. And it was, I think, from early 50s that it was purchased. It has some tooling on here that it looks like Bambi on there. And, but the leather's in really bad condition. It's cracked. The knife was left in the holster. It got wet. I don't think the person realized that it got wet. It was in the bottom of a toolbox. And so you already know what's going to happen here, but the blade itself is in really bad condition. Pitted, rusty here, and I'm going to have to do some serious work to clean this up. And I've had knives that were not quite this bad that I cleaned up without removing the handle, but I think we're going to take this one all the way apart. The handle itself is wrapped in electrical tape. I think that was mainly to give something to keep the knife from slipping out. We're going to take this apart. I'll decide whether to put the tape back on it to return it to that condition. But let's get over here on the workbench and we'll get started. I appreciate you taking time to be with me in the shop today. Okay, we'll get a up-close look here. The pitting is really bad on this side of the knife. This side's not nearly as bad, but none of it's good. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see if we can get this electrical tape off of here, and I'm not sure. I don't want to cut and damage it. Well, it looks like it's going to peel apart. I bet you couldn't do that with today's electrical tape. It'd probably get dried out. All right, we're about to see what this handle looks like. It's going to leave a bunch of adhesive on the handle here, I think. Yeah. These scales are probably going to be in bad shape. If I'm wrapping it, again, I guess it wouldn't be so bad. All right, so I have this unwrapped. This last layer left a lot of adhesive behind on the scales. Yeah. Let me see if I could, how easy it is to clean that off the scale. It might be easier to do it now while I've got a firm hold on it here. We'll let that sit for a few minutes here. I can make new scales for this if I need to. I'm just using this single edge razor blade as a scraper. Not cutting, but scraping with it here. I think that's going to work pretty well. The solvent really didn't seem like it did much. The pins are raised up pretty good. I think I'll find out once I'll sand those even with the scales here, the handle scales, and see if I can drive those pins out. I know, not scraping here, I'm cutting. The goop is pretty thick here. This side is really thick. I'm not sure why it's so much thicker on one side than the other. The scale's got some pretty good cracks to it here. I'm looking here. This has got, and maybe it's just the style of the material, but there's some pretty good cracks here. So I'm not sure what was used for the scales. I guess I'll do a little more cleaning here and find out if I think I can save those scales. But I'm not sure what that is, if that's wood or not. Let me do this. So let's shift gears and let's see if I can remove these scales by working on these pins here a little bit. They're peened over. This side here seems the more consistent, so maybe it was peened from this side. Yeah, let's see if we can get these off of here. All right. I think I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to save this, and with all these cracks in here and delaminations, I don't think I'm going to worry about saving these handle skins. I'll just get some replacement for it, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to take the quick way. I'm just going to take it over to the grinder and grind through this top part. I'll do it on both sides, and we'll see if we can get this driven apart. Be right back. All right. Let's see if we can drive those out of there. The person that I'm doing this work for told me to do whatever I thought was best. So I thought it was best at this point just to replace these scales, especially with the condition that that one's in. All right, let's remove the guard here. I'm gonna clean this up just a little bit here. It looks like it might be stainless steel, or maybe it's just a nickel plate guard. So the knife is in exceedingly bad shape. I was just looking here. It is straight still. This side's in pretty good shape. I could probably sand through this pitting and clean the rust off of it, but I'm really concerned about this side. And I've done this before where I got this all cleaned up, but in some of the pitting there was still residue from the rusted metal in there, and it caused it to prematurely rust again. So I'm going to use electrolysis to clean this knife blade up. And not an expert at it. This will be the first time I've tried electrolysis. Once I get the treatment done, then I will come back and decide how I want to approach this. I do want to remove as much of this pitting as possible on this side, but the pitting is quite deep, especially up here in this area here. And I'm thinking I'd have to remove close to a 1/64 of an inch of steel across that surface to get that cleaned up. So I'll decide once the treatment's been done. I start a little bit of sanding on it, and I can go from there. So I'm just going to use this plastic shoe box. It fits in there corner to corner. I've got some copper wire I can attach to this. I'll put a piece of sacrificial steel in here, and then we'll see how it works. Like I said, I've never done this before. We're going to give it a try. I'm just going to use this old clamp that I found on the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket a few years ago. It's probably a good option to clean during this process, but we're going to use it as a sacrificial. And hopefully this copper wire I've got is heavy enough duty to do the job. I guess we'll find out. It may be light enough that it burns through it. Let's put a couple tablespoons of washing soda in there. I'll get some hot water in. I'll get this hooked up. We'll come back when I have it set up and it's working. Okay, so I'm set up in here. I've got my sacrificial steel, which is that clamp. I've got the knife blade in there. I have it hooked up. It's been running for just a couple of minutes. Interesting, the green copper is already, or the copper is already green in there. First I'm like, oh, did I not remove all that insulation? And the water's starting to cloud up. So I'm going to let this run. I'm running on 6 volts and 2 amps. I'll come back here in about 20 minutes and we'll take a quick look and recap from there and figure out how much longer we need to have it in there. All right, I really got looking under bright lights and I had some kind of rust color still in here that kind of bothered me. So I put it in again and ran it for another hour and a half, actually, as long as I had the first time here. And I think you can see pretty clearly there, original Bowie knife. And then down here, it says, it looks like a CG, it says cutlery, and it says Italy. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some sandpaper, and we're going to start doing some of the initial sanding here. I've really got to decide what I want to do here. I could just polish this edge and this top and leave this black here. I'm not a fan of that because it's got a little bit of roughness here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sanding on this, and I'm going to see how much I can get cleaned up but leave the print in place. Maybe kind of split the difference there. So we'll see how that looks. It doesn't need to be saved, but it is pretty cool in there now that you can see that. So let me get it in the vise over here and we'll start doing some initial sanding. I'm using some 220 garnet sandpaper wrapped around a file to give me a nice flat surface. Garnet is not the best sandpaper for this, but I have a bunch of it. So this is what we're going to be using today. And it's not terribly sharp, but if I get into that, I'll pay the price. So. I find having something long like this helps me keep it square to the face as opposed to something shorter. It doesn't take very long, and you can really start to see the writing there, but I can see the pitting is going to be pretty deep here. Obviously, I've not removed much metal here yet. I wish this side was pitted like that side. Then it would look balanced, right? If I left this area here all pitted and cleaned the other one to the same. Can't make that out. If you were a knife guy, you'd probably know maybe the manufacturer. It's from Italy. It looks like EG or EC cutlery. I'm gonna flip over to the other side. I want to see how it cleans up. And maybe I'll try to make them look somewhat matched. I figure if that's something that was in the forging process there. I'm going to speed this up. I'm going to work on this top edge here. I'm not sure what this drop point, it's not sharp, but it's pointed like a knife blade. And then I'm going to work on this edge here, and then I'll flip it over and do those two surfaces again. I intend to make these areas here as much mirror-like as possible here. So I'll speed it up a little bit. I'll probably do a little bit of sanding this way and here, but what I'm trying to do as I sand is to be very consistent here with the strokes. You'll get some, if I circle around like this, you'll get circular scratches. I'm trying to avoid that. And I really don't want to do this, but the only way to get in there, I think, and get that cleaned up. So then I'll have to come in here and pull that out to get rid of these scratches that I've created in here horizontally. I decided to stop here and see what this side is going to look like on these two edges here. I really need to decide what I'm doing here. I'm going to keep cleaning on this a little bit. I'll probably stop for the day and think about it and come back tomorrow or the next day with a fresh idea. But let me clean up here a little bit more and then we'll set this aside. Yeah, I think I'm going to park it for the night. This side was not nearly as pitted as this side. In some ways, I like this pitted look here. I mean, I'd rather have it look brand new, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this a little bit further, especially from here down. This part here doesn't look like it was imprinted as deep. And I'm going to, I think, leave this aged textured look, however you want to describe that. And this bevel here and this bevel here, I think I'm going to grind on those until, we'll see if I can get there where it's perfectly clean. But I'm going to work on this side first and then try to make this side match it. It could be that this side here is as far along as I'm going to go. But let's take a look at it. And I think I'm going to take it over here on the sharpening stone and detune it a little bit there. No sense in getting myself anymore. So I've been working on this for a while. The pitting was severe enough, especially on the other side. We'll get there in just a second. But it was severe enough that it was going to be an extremely difficult task to try to get there with sandpaper. So I went ahead and switched to a file. And here we are on that side. So I cleaned up the bevel, got all the pitting out of the bevel and out of this drop point bevel. There's probably a technical term for it. I don't know what it is. So I have all the pitting out of these profiles here. Now I am working on this side here, and I'm just about there. The one thing that I'll need to do is to balance this bevel from side to side. If you look, this bevel here is wider than this one. So I've got a little bit more file work to do to get that set. Once I get the bevels shaped and clean like I want them to, then I will switch back to sandpaper and I'll work down through the grits to get rid of all of these file marks that are in here. But I think we're making good progress. This profile here, I didn't want to file and remove the name on here, Original Bowie Knife, and the makers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some very fine sandpaper on here and polish this up. It's still going to have some of that pitting there, but I think once I get it polished, I think that'll actually look pretty cool on there. And this side will have it, but it won't be nearly as pronounced as this side. So I'm going to continue filing along here on this side to get my bevels matched, finish cleaning up this here. I've got a little bit down in here and some out here towards the tip. This secondary bevel up here is good, and it looks like it's pretty well matched with the other side as well. So I'm just going to go back to here and keep filing here until I get that cleaned up. And I'll use a round file in here to make sure I have a nice radius here, that I don't have any hard corners here, because my experience is that if you have any hard corners, not rounded, that could be an area that will lead to cracking in that part of the knife. And I doubt that this knife will be much more than a showpiece once I'm finished with it. So it's probably not going to have a severe life. Now that my bevels are clean, I'll move from the file to sandpaper. And I'm actually going to use the file as a nice flat surface, so I'll wrap sandpaper around it. And I want to get a coarse enough sandpaper to remove these scratches from the file. And as I go through each grit, what I'll do is I'll go until I get an even sheen across there, because each layer of sandpaper or each grit of sandpaper is going to leave scratches. But there will be a finer scratch than the last set of scratches, if that makes sense. So when you have an even sheen on there, then I should have gotten rid of any of the scratches from the last coarser sandpaper. All right, now with that said, if I'm using sandpaper, I'm just going to grab this 220 here. I'm going to start, I think, coarser than that. But if I'm sanding like this, that will remove the metal, but it's leaving like fishhook pattern on there. So when I get on here at the sandpaper, I'll be doing more sanding like this, where I drag from one end to the other. And this will allow me to get rid of any fish hook type scratches in the surface. But this is 220. I'm going to go grab some that's a little bit coarser and we'll go from there. I'm going to start with this emery cloth here. And let me just get it folded on here. This is medium emery. And I can see in this area here, I have most of those scratches gone. I can see some here at an angle there, and along this top edge, which probably means that I had some tipping, which I would think is normal, you know, without using some type of a jig. But I'm going like this until I feel the bevel, and then I'll hold that bevel there. And I'll continue with this medium on all four of these bevels until I can't see any of the file marks on the surface. And then I'll go to the next finer sandpaper. I'll be back here in just a little bit once I have this ready for the next grit. Do this bevel the exact same way. Find that bevel. It's harder because it's such a smaller profile face. If you wanted to go this direction, you could. I'll use this round file in here, and I don't want to do this. I'm going to roll it and pull. I have just a couple scratches. There's one there, it's about a 1/4 inch long, kind of this angle, and one there, and one there. I want to show you the difference between this bevel. I don't know if you can see it or not. There are scratches, but there are nice straight scratches out here to the point. And then this is the file side. And you can see, maybe it's hard for you to see, but I can see some scratches here and some J-hook scratches and such from using the file. So I'm going to flip it over. We're going to do the exact same thing on this side. Just as a point of reference, this was the side that was severely pitted. Had to be at least a 32nd of an inch deep pitting there. think it's focused here. You can see the scratches from the medium grit emery cloth. I'm going to go to 220, and this is the new sheen here. You can see it's still scratches, but they're much finer now. So I'll do the same to this side here, and then I'll come back when I'm ready for the next grit finer after that. I moved from 220 to 320 sandpaper here. I tell you what, I made a grave mistake. I'm not bleeding, so it wasn't in that area, but the day's still young. That's still a possibility. But I was working up in here, it was on the other side, and I rolled the file a little bit trying to clean that up, and when I drug it back here, I went right through the edge of the sandpaper, and you know what I just did? I put like 3 scratches about 4 inches long there with the file, and I needed to go, well, I had to go all the way back to the medium grit sandpaper and bring that all the way back up to where it was. Luckily, I wasn't in the very finish sandpapers. I was in the 220, but it took probably 25 minutes to get back to where I was before I did that roll, and it was on one of the last swipes I was making on the on that grit of sandpaper. So I guess if you're going to use a file, be aware that it can bite you, but I like the fact that I trust that it's flat, and yeah, and it's long enough I can keep my hands reasonably far away from this edge here. I have detuned this edge a couple of times. Once I get all these 4 facets set the way I want, there'll be a finish bevel down here. I'll call it a sharpening bevel that I will do you know, before I'm finished here. And you want to try not to do any wiggle. Set it down and drag it there. And I'm going just until I get rid of any of the scratches. I'm working on, there's like 10 scratches up in here that may have been from me twisting as I get ready to start pulling. So I'm going to finish this grit. Well, hang with me just a minute. I'm about ready to switch to the other side, and I'll show you the difference here. I guess what I should have done is taken one all the way from the beginning to the end so you can see them compared. But what I'll do, well, you know what, I can cut and paste the video and show what it looked like after the filing and then after the sanding. I've just about got these little scratches up in here removed. Shoot, it's going to take a little while. I'll be right back. Just now finishing up with the 400 grit sandpaper. I've spent about a half an hour, 15 minutes aside on the 400 grit sandpaper. And having this bright light here helps because I can see if I have any scratches from the previous grit that aren't removed yet. Remember, this is the side that was deeply pitted. And I've already completed this step on the other side. So after the 400 grit, I'm going to go to the 600 grit, and I may stop at 600 and then just use a stropping board in the same manner and see if I like that sheen. I'll probably do the 600 and then spend 10 or 15 minutes with the stropping board and see if that's going to give me the look I'm going for, and if not, then I'll continue on up to probably 2000 grit. Let's take a look at it here. I think it looks pretty good. I can see that I've got a little upturn in my bevel out here, or the angle out here. I may want to straighten that out a little bit by working on this side of that bevel a little bit more. And then I need to be aware of that as I drag off this end here to keep that straight. This one's straighter. So I'm going to finish the 400 grit, and then I'll go to 600, and then I'll be back here in just a little bit. All right, I probably should have just gone and looked and found some 600 grit, but I am out of the 600 grit. So this is a big step from the 400 to the 800 grit. So it'll probably take a considerable amount of time with this fine of a grit to get the even luster on here. But that is what we're going to do. This has been an interesting project here. I have recovered some blades that were in bad shape. This was the worst blade that I've done, and it's the largest blade. The only ones I've had that were in pretty bad shape were pocket knives, and but I was up for the challenge here. I think we'll end up with something here that the owner will be happy to have when it's finished. I've worked on this knife on 3 different times with the filing and sanding, and I have at this point at least 8 hours in this process. That's beyond the cleaning of the rust and such. I have to think about whether I want to break this into another part and have one for the handle, one for the blade, and then one for the sheath. So I'm really trying to figure out what to do on the handle, the material that is. I want to keep it look as original as possible. I started off thinking that, and then I was looking through some colors, and there's really cool blue, but I'm like, you know, that's nowhere near what it was. The owner of the knife told me to do what I think looks good, is right, however you want to say it. And I guess that could be 2 different things, right? What I happen to like as far as color could be totally different than, you know, is right. And to me, is right would be to return it as close as possible to its original finish. So I guess I'm just talking myself into it here. I'm going to see if I can locate some material that looks like the original scales, and I have those, so I can compare it. I see I've got like a little twist there I'm working on here. I may have missed it when I went to the 400 grit. If so, it's going to take a little bit of work to get it off of there with the 800. If that's the case, I may have to back up, finish up with this 800 grit, decide if I want to go to stropping board or if I want to do something different, like continue on up in the grits. I guess probably what I'll do is I'll take a dozen swipes with a stropping board and see what it does with the scratches from this 800 grit sandpaper. So I'll be back here in just a little bit. I did I keep the previous grit around the file, and it's probably a good thing. You can see here where I kind of got through. I would have been in the file, and I would be taking some time off from this if I did that. Go all the way back to medium grit emery paper. I would be frustrated. Rouge here on the stropping board. Stay away from that edge. Even though I don't intend for it to get sharp, as I'm working on both these sides, it's pretty sharp out there, but it's not the final bevel that's going to be. So I'm going to go further up in the grits. I'll come back. I'm going to go 1,000, 1,500. Shoot, might as well do 2,000, and then come back with the stropping board, and I'll bring you back at that time. Right now I've got a pretty fine angle on here, and it's nice for cutting, but I don't think anybody's going to be testing this thing chopping, but chopping it would be kind of fragile. Let me get this out of the vise. We'll take a look at it here. All right, let's take a look here. This is where I'm at now. This is after 2,000 grit on all the surfaces. On purpose, I left these rough until I got to 800, or no, I think it was 1,000 grit. And I haven't used the stropping board yet. This back's actually probably sharper than it needs to be. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I was saying I'm not sure when I need to sharpen this edge. What I might do is just wait until I have the handle on it and set those bevels. But a thin bevel like this, it's a cutter, there's no doubt about it. If you were just cutting with this, but a Bowie knife like this is a chopper as well. This fine of an edge here would roll and break pretty easy. So when I take it from, I don't know what that is, a 15-degree angle, when I take that to a steeper angle, in other words, flatter, it will give more strength to that edge and make it more durable. I'm going to go ahead and grab the stropping board. Let's see what we can do with this, with the stropping board. I could go over on the bench grinder here and use the polishing wheel, but if anybody's ever had a tool taken out of their hand with the polishing or the wire wheel and had it throw it, you'll know why I'm not excited about doing it that way. I think this is coming out pretty good. I was kind of daydreaming here, just polishing this bevel, and then I realized I've been on one side quite a bit longer than the other, so I flipped it over and spent a little more time on this other side here. Let's take it out, look at it, see here. I'm going to have to be really careful when I put my edge bevel on here. If I get up in here with the stone, I'll be upset with myself because I'll be somewhat starting over again. Boy, it's got a nice shine to it. See if we can see me here. Yep. Yeah, that is shiny. All right. I got to figure out what I'm doing on the handle. Well, there you go. I am going to break this into a couple different videos. We've got the knife restoration part of it. I received the handle material for the knife, and I will do a short video on that, and that should go pretty quick. I'll cut the scales to the right size. I bought a sheet of it, and I'll come back when we're trying to get that shaped. Hopefully there's no drama involved. I've not worked with this material before, so we'll see how that goes. And then I'll have a sheath building video later on someplace down the road. But I think that it turned out really nice, especially when you consider where it started. The rust on here, it was flaky, thick on there. And I think many people would just toss that knife out. I think it came out really nice. I'll tell you what, if the person that it belongs to doesn't want it, I'll take it. It's really cool. And I figured out that the person that bought this in early 50s, I think was like 24 when he bought it. Pretty cool knife. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up there. I do appreciate you hanging out today, watching my video. It's a little bit long-winded, but I thought about cutting stuff out. So if you got here to the end, then you saw the whole thing. I'm always hesitant to cut stuff out because I think there might be somebody out there saying, I want to see how it's done so they can see the process on there as well. I mean, obviously, I could have pulled the knife out, start sanding it, and then end here. So maybe there's a happy medium in between, but I do think it's just a beautiful knife, and I'm happy that I had the chance to work on it. I haven't sharpened it, the final bevel on there. I'll do that after I get the handle installed. Matter of fact, this is pretty sharp. I'll probably detune it one more time. At least I need to get some tape or something on the edge so I don't hurt myself in the process. Once again, I appreciate you being here. Please like, share, and subscribe. But more importantly, I do hope you have a nice day. I mean it. Have a nice day.